So firstly, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and also pay our respect to their elders past, present and future. And we also want to say thank you for welcoming us to your beautiful city. Perth is actually better, but you're bigger, so you win that prize. The artwork that you can see on the front page here is done by another Melsadoa's Noongar. I'm also Yamaji, Budimai Yamaji. So this is one of my family, so it's really close to the heart. Nellie Green, she's been in Melbourne for a long time, and she's actually the artist that provided this for Nyankira, which means son,
means
mother and son.
Yeah.
Mother.
Go on. Life giver. your mother, your life giver, and the sun. Yura is rising, so we see it as the house of the rising sun. Yeah. And just to say that Nellie is not blood to me, but she's my sister girl too, and I'm very proud of her doing that artwork. Are we on there? Yeah. Acknowledgement of all the participants in the Birthing on Noongar Butcher project, particularly the Aboriginal women who told their stories, and the community members that attended the consultation sessions, the focus groups. I felt we got the real stories. We did it in yarning. We sat down, had a yarn, and, we knew some, others we didn't. But I felt, their voice came through really strongly in the interviews we provided throughout this project.
I mean, it was structured in the sense of we say Wadjulas for white way, yes. The white people, yep. But we did it our way.
Yep.
Took it back to what we needed and what we thought was needed.
And I think it was, it was hard at the beginning because we had 60% Aboriginal women and 40% expert Wadjula researchers. And at first that was very difficult, I could see our mob sitting at the back listening to all the acronyms and saying, what are they talking about? And we had to embed culture into this. Just watching that process actually took about a year, come together, and we became learning off each other, but then seeing the importance of the women's voices and the culture that was embedded in this. It was done on women, Aboriginal women, birthing on Whadjuk Noongar country. So it didn't matter if you were Koori, Yamaji, Wongai. So up there you can see our Whadjuk country where the arrow goes.
So it's just giving you that indication of the different nations within the Noongar nation. So we had to make sure that it was known that it was actually birthing on Perth, in Perth, which is Whadjuk nation.
Yep.
So from here, you can see the little artwork down the bottom here, this beautiful artwork indicating a pregnant woman. This was done by Valerie Archie.
Yeah.
So you all know Valerie from last year. I've seen her on a few photos. Yes. She's from the Binjara Palika women, who's also a midwife and an amazing artist, and she designed this birthing on Noongar Budja logo. So we just wanted to also acknowledge her, and it's appreciated, and she's also given the rights to use it, so we really appreciate that.
And she's also working with us now at Nyankira with the Baby Coming You Ready rubric or tool that's going to be released through health areas that has been designed by Aboriginal women.
And it's a project around perinatal.
Yeah, hoping to replace the
Mental health.
Edinburgh postnatal scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do something instead of, as you all know, if you've been using that Edinburgh scale, it just doesn't fit anywhere. I don't think it fits for anybody, but this is one of the projects that's come out of Yunkura, and it's really taken off, and it's going to be something that is going to be very useful right across the state for our women and also the health professionals that are using it.
As you can see, we've got our Aboriginal investigators and non-Aboriginal investigators, and we partnered with 13 different departments, agencies, and they sat on our steering committee. We wanted to acknowledge everybody in this slide, even the ones that may have had to leave us for a while and not be with us at the end. So all of these women were very... Oh, there's a man in there, sorry. There was one man, yeah.
He was brave.
He was brave.
Always coming in with flowers and,
we ran it.
saying nice things, like we're going to kill him or something if he doesn't say something nice.
Yeah.
But we let him go away.
Yeah, we did.
But it also provided something over that 5 years, is that it was a very stable team. There was a lot of continuity. It was consistent. It was always us there. Everyone was there. Like we said, there was around 18 people that were Aboriginal investigators, but there's been a few that have been in and out, and for whatever reason. So, I mean, I always looked at it as you've done your part within this journey, and now it's, you know, someone else is going to come in. So, yeah, there was, like I said, there was a few changes, and then that just added the strengths and the different interpretations and translations that were, you know, around the findings into today's health settings.
And I found that we had a lot of control over that once it got to the findings, yeah.
Because it was, it's a pretty unique project. Obviously, the lead is Professor Rhonda Marriott, if you've heard of her, and she's, again, the lead. However, the uniqueness around it is that there was, as you can see on there, the Aboriginal investigators. I don't think there's been anything like that in any research project across Australia, where we're so used to non-Aboriginal people doing the research on us, you know. Again, we're the most researched people, but we've still got all of these issues, so what's happening out there? So for me, this gave us the opportunity to really have a voice and make the decisions, and having an Aboriginal cultural group as well as a part of that. You know, the processes, everything they went through, it had to go through the cultural advisory group.
Yeah, the Aboriginal consultative group sat up level with the steering group. Janine, weren't you chair of this cultural leadership and brokerage group?
Yep.
And ended up the chair of the Aboriginal consultative group. So, yeah.
It was important to have that embedded into this project, because, again, if we didn't, it would have still been done the way that it's always been done all these years. So we constantly had a lens over everything that was being done around this project. So we're pretty proud of that, and that it continued right through.
Oh, so that's what we just...
So yeah, that's just basically how it was set up around the project governance. As you can see, it had the steering committee, which comprised of 13 organisation partners. We had the ACG that I was chair of, and we had 11 Aboriginal leaders. The evidence and that word, I just can't get my tongue around that. Development guideline, the edge, yeah. So it's just really basically showing you the thought that went into the processes around ensuring that this project was going in the right direction. And the cultural leadership and brokerage was a very important area as well, because that was to do with community engagement, bringing in all the community partners, making sure that they felt that they could have a voice as well. So it was really, really important and to embrace the elders. We went to Derby Yerrigan Heart and Health Group and spoke to the Aboriginal elders there, and it was amazing, wasn't it? It was they felt like, they said they felt important.
Yeah.
Because we were asking them what they thought.
We did not start the interview process of our women until we spoke to the elders and the senior women.
So, yeah, you can...
Okay. I'm going to...
This is Julie Coffin.
Yeah.
She does a lot of significant work on cultural security, and in this diagram, Julie explains she describes in her publication Rising to the Challenge of Aboriginal Health by Creating Cultural Security. So we're just going to play a little.
Okay, the cultural security scale is really, as you can see, that it's a layered approach, and hopefully people have at least maybe seen this before or have an understanding around the concept. This diagram was developed in relation to me being exceptionally frustrated with all of the terminology and the fact that people were attaching terminology to different actions, and yet it didn't seem that it was reflective, it didn't seem that it was something that people could work towards. And I thought, well, people really need a bit of a map or a language set that defines what our expectations are around service delivery for Aboriginal people in a health context, which is where it started. So cultural awareness was something that was used globally, just around having that very, very basic level. Like, we're all aware, doesn't mean that we do anything different, and we're aware that cultures exist, we're aware there's cultural difference, but what it means in an action sense is very little. It just is, we might have done some awareness, and years ago that was a 1 hour session, and you could tick the box and you were sort of done. The next level up, the terminology around cultural safety really has come from the mighty nurses, and this was, of course, a very different setting to Australia because A, we don't have a treaty of Waitangi, B, we don't have just one other main language set, and C, we don't have the recognition in Australia around, I guess, that by cultural existence and unity. So it's problematic if we were only going to that point because the setting is not the same, it is a different context. So I guess that then started me thinking around there needs to be another attainment, there needs to be a different level for Aboriginal people and for services to adhere to, and that's when the terminology around cultural security has sort of been bandied around, and I quite liked that as a end point because
Well, that was really a good little cut-off.
Sorry, I hope you got the gist of that. Yeah. With our interviews, we had a whole project cohort of 146 who were interviewed or attended a focus group or was a part of a consultation process. And we also had a national survey where 116 midwives from across Australia completed a general survey and 32 midwifery educators completing the educator survey. The analysis for this data has recently been completed, and the outcomes show the strong relationship between the survey data and the qualitative data, which it represents us today. The qualitative data collection started in late 2015 and mostly took place in 216, some in the second half of 216. The cohorts included Aboriginal women, Aboriginal birthing women, Aboriginal senior women, and our Aboriginal elders. The birthing women were aged between 18 and 39 years at the time that they participated in the yarning with Aboriginal researchers. Women in this cohort reported having recently given birth in the previous 5 years, maybe 10 years.
Leading up to the project.
Yeah, leading up to the project. And most reported from Noongar Budja, which is our Noongar country. Some women were from elsewhere in WA. As I said, it was birthing on Noongar Budja, so we did have Yamatji women and Wongai women and Noongar women, and some that had come from Koori regions. The Aboriginal senior women who participated in the yarns, there was 11, and they were 40 plus years, and 5 of those 11 were either working or had worked in the health system. Now, I'm not going to read all of this because it'll take forever. So I have a discrepancy here. I think we interviewed 10 elders, and they met with an Aboriginal researcher, whoever was in there that they felt comfortable with. I think I'm going on into the birthing stories now.
They were aged between 65 and 90.
and 90.
And to hear some of those stories was just, there was not a dry eye. You would be just sitting there and trying to imagine what they went through, but how they have survived and brought their strength and resilience through, and it made me feel more empowered coming out of there and saying, well, if they could do it, then what are we complaining about? We need to keep this going and make sure that it is a safe space for our women to be birthing off country.
And one of the messages, there were many messages, but one was, we've come out from under the veranda. They were birthing in a hospital, but not allowed inside, on that veranda, and now today they can come in from that veranda.
And we made sure that we went to them, we went to their home, their safe environment, so they can discuss whatever they wanted to. Of course, we took cakes and biscuits and...
There was always a feed, a good feed.
Which they obviously wanted to keep the spare one. It's like, you're not taking that cake, it's not finished, eh? Yeah. Leave it here.
Yeah.
So that's just really basically giving you an indication of the breakdown of the target groups that we wanted to get information of. It's really important to have that wide range.
And I guess I must say that we had a total of 71 midwives, clinical educators involved in the project. Most of those weren't Aboriginal, and they were done by the researchers. Rhonda Marriott conducted in the hospitals focus groups of midwives and different clinical staff, and had to hold her tongue because there were quite racist comments coming out, and she had to remain calm at that point, and we're looking at that, yeah.
So now we're going to go into the birthing women's voices, and we're just going to play a couple of them around what they felt with their experiences.
And we got a couple of our young colleagues to voice these for the Aboriginal women.
What does shame mean to you?
Not knowing what's going to happen, and you're scared and you don't want to ask too many questions. Yeah, so it's wanting someone to sit down and ask if you need anything and if you are okay and what they can do to help.
The next one is talking about being scared.
I had numerous people looking after me, and the midwife had never delivered a baby before. This was her first delivery, and I had complications with my pregnancy, so I had 5 random people constantly in the room, and a doctor ended up delivering my baby. At one point, they told me to be quiet because I was being too loud pushing. I didn't react too well to that. I was a bit aggressive. It must have been challenging for the staff, but I was only 15. I wasn't very nice, but being a teenager giving birth is really difficult. It was definitely scary.
At any age, that would be absolutely terrifying, let alone a young 15-year-old with feeling like she's got all these adults around her and then someone saying those sorts of things to her, you know, like I don't get that, and hopefully it's not like that. Or we just keep giving our young girls voices to stand up and say, hey, hang on a minute, that's not appropriate, or no, don't talk to me like that, you know. So hopefully with all of these findings and that, we can make some changes. This one's around building trust.
I suppose just not talk to them like they're a patient, you know. Get to know them. Build up that trust. Like talking more, getting to know them. Not treating everyone the same. Like personally asking them what they'd like. And not just telling them these are your options, you know.
And I must admit that throughout the interviews, I didn't see a black face. I didn't see the same person twice. There was no one I could ask questions. They were just doing these things, and I didn't really understand what they were doing.
Yeah, that ignorance of they're not in the room, so we'll just talk about them. Similar to the skit that we did the other day in the workshop. So it's real life. This one that we're going to play, these two here, are what women described as the need to feel safe when they're in the hospital having their baby. Oh, come on. Hey?
A constant liaison officer is needed. Someone that I can build a relationship with who understands me and how my family works, so they can cater their advice of how my family functions, and they just lack that completely. No one took into consideration what my family situation was. It was just always, you need to do this and you need to do that. It doesn't work like that.
It was not that long ago. I know they're busy, but someone should be with you at all times. It doesn't matter, and especially for your first baby, you know, just have that comfort in there, and you know, not to be just left stranded.
This one's around experiences of racism and what they've faced, and some of the women who needed to feel safe when in hospital having their babies. So I'm sure you're either been through it yourself or you know someone within your family that has been through these things.
Like, we actually did see it out of our own eyes, how they spoke to the other girls, how they spoke to me and my sister. Not only me, my sister sitting there too. They were talking arrogant to her too. And she's just sitting there on the side of me, you know, asking what's happening on my behalf. They were just talking down to her too, and it's sickening, really.
And sometimes we might have other beliefs. It's not even about the culture. No one's ever the same. The thing is, sometimes a white person can give off the signs, even if they're totally a good person. But sometimes it feels as if we feel undermined and very small, and we pick up on the unspoken and the spiteful.
I think they need to stop second guessing Aboriginal women. You know, most of us are strong and independent, and we are very family orientated. So we've got that close bond with our family. And they just think that we don't know anything, and it's not the case, you know. I've noticed that. You know, don't think, oh, Aboriginal, oh. We all love our kids, no matter who you are. Mothers love their children. I think they need to give more support. If it was a white woman, they'd be more care for that. Worry about that. But I reckon they should give more care to Aboriginal women. You know, even though they seem like they don't want it, deep down they need it.
So that's some pretty, powerful statement there that, stop second guessing. They know what they want, they know their own bodies, and they have their support in place. They don't need to be reminded that they're, incompetent or they're not going to be a good mother and all the other typical stereotyping. So to capture those, we thought we wanted you to hear some of those parts of the interviews that we did.
And also, birthing on country is very important, but we wanted to do it also in a more urban area because that was our country too. So, yeah.
Off you go.
Oh, what am I doing?
Put your cup down.
I was thirsty. All right.
You're standing up like you're standing at a bar.
I know my legs are shaking. In the senior women's data group, many of the stories were similar to the Aboriginal birthing women. For example, one senior woman said in relation to her own birth, we've just heard this, haven't we? If there was an Aboriginal liaison officer, at the hospital, coming to see you, specifically, that would have made a big difference. Someone that you can talk to and all that sort of thing. Even though I had ticked all the forms that I was Aboriginal, there was no support in the hospitals like Aboriginal support. I don't know if it's there today, because we're talking 11 years ago, so I don't really know. Maybe they've got something set up because you do feel alone. Another senior woman remarked about the racial assumptions made by midwives about Aboriginal women. There's been times here at the hospital where some midwives have overstepped the mark well and truly, especially around comments and stereotyping. Oh, this is your sixth kid and you're married to the same man. You've got all your kids to the same man. So, those racial assumptions and, if I can just go back to my previous role as CEO at Yorgum, my counsellor took one of the kids that had been sexually abused down to an agency, and they came to her and said, "Oh, can you read or write? Do you need any help?" And it was just such a horrible assumption. Yeah. So as you can see, there are three themes that came out of the senior women's interviews: intergenerational cultural practices, family and support networks, and birthing on country, which are very important.
No, I was just looking to see if there was also...
No.
So now we're going to go on to the elder women's voices, and I thought I'd just do this one because this is my mother duck,
Yes.
Deris, and don't read it too closely because she's actually told people that I nearly killed her.
Yes.
Who says that about your firstborn? I was only £6, come on. Well, I'm still 6 pounds now.
Yes, of course.
But these were some of the stories that we wanted to capture around our elders, their birthing stories. There's nothing written that we can see in our families from our own mums, aunties, nanas, great nanas, what they went through. Yes, we do hear them from our own story, family stories, but to be able to honour our elders that we have been in, working with through this project. So we came up with their birthing stories and we wanted to launch them at the symposium. And so this was just something, and they were absolutely delighted. They just felt like they were the most important people. And yeah, some of them had really difficult experiences in that, but to actually see this information in writing and for future generations is pretty powerful, to make our children realise that they didn't get to where they are today by themselves. They got there because of what happened back from our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers and before that.
And there were 18 elders and senior women's posters developed for that, and they sat underneath and were inundated from other women clinicians. Really, really wanted to tell their stories, and at NAIDOC Week, because of her, we honoured the elders, and they said, hang on a minute, we want to keep these stories. We want to make a book out of these and have resources at the back of that book that will help other clinicians or birthing people to work our way. So we're working on that at the moment.
And just one of the pieces from one of the posters is one of the elders was...
No, I talk to myself.
Not up here. That was the main birth... I feel like I've got two voices going on here.
Come on.
Stop it. One of the, I'm just going to say one of the nanas, that was the main birthing area because you couldn't build your campsite where the animals went to eat. It had to be away in the bush. But with the Maya, the house, the place, the little birth hut, it was the only hut that you could build down by the river because that was where the old people needed water. The other Mayas were up the hill. Once the old women knew that it was time for her baby to come, then they'd go down and build that little Maya for the mother and look after her. Then another one, and this is one of my grandmother's sisters, so another nana. I recognise this story, so can I?
Go
yeah,
for
thanks.
it.
So she was like, my grandmother was a bush midwife. This is my cousin talking. She delivered 23 babies, even delivering her sister's babies while she was 7 months pregnant herself. We'd got a little taped interview with someone, but it's not a very good quality, but basically old Nana was speaking very softly and this person asked her if she enjoyed being a midwife. And she said, well, no, not really, but there was no one else to do it. But she did it well. It was a tough job, and especially when it's for family and friends, which it mostly was. It wasn't just any old person, it was someone in the family or friends. So yeah, she was just like, I don't know anything about birthing, I just gave birth, but they wanted her. So she actually did more than 23 that I know of, and to do that in the bush, is pretty amazing under the circumstances. So, and the majority of those are still here with us today, so we often talk about what she did back then. These stories of old ways and across generations, they were told about old ways demonstrating the persistence of cultural practices, particularly women supporting each other and giving birth on country. Retelling their stories, their personal memories, led the women to speak of saving this cultural wisdom for the benefit of maintaining cultural birthing and practices. For example, the elder women describe birth on country as maintaining the sense of where they belong. They got that connection and belonging to country as being enduring. As Noongar people, you always have that yearning to go home, wherever home might be. And another one also recollected and passed on that it's hard to know what happy was. I know there was tough days, yeah, but you know, you sort of, Noongars grew up with that expectation of it being tough, and tough life you had in front of you. No one had money. And you were lucky if you had a good camp to live in, especially in winter time. My mother picked up along the way, probably from her mum, granny in the bush. She was 9 when she was taken from her family, so she's already had all that experience of bush medicine. Also, your basic child rearing practices and health. There was always something in the cupboard to fix something, and even though they were 80 miles from the nearest hospital.
Four generations of women's stories and experience of childbearing in Birthing on Noongar Budja project highlighted that even with changes to maternity care across time, they have failed to understand or support Aboriginal women's cultural needs during childbearing. Today, it remains important to Aboriginal women in urban areas to birth close to home and on country, have family acknowledged and included through the pregnancy. You know, like in the birthing room, 2 people allowed. You know, we need our grandmothers, our mothers, maybe our aunties, our husbands, you know.
And as far as I'm aware, there's really actually no policy, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mel, there's no policy to say that only 2 people can go into the birthing room with you. But they use that as their excuse because God forbid you have more than 2 blackfellas sitting in a room there. What'll happen, you know? The woman's pushing out a baby, wild, swearing. They might start fighting or something in there, you know, feel threatened. But we don't. We educate our girls now. You take in there who you want to take. I even actually now tell them that there's 2 larger birthing rooms at our hospital. Request them. They can't knock you back, whereas the other ones, they're pretty tight, closed in. But no, you have a voice, you have a right. You take in there who you want to take.
Yeah. Sorry, I just had a vision of Sean in the birthing area that, you know, the comedian.
Oh, Sean.
He was talking about that.
He should know he got 6 kids, eh?
Sorry, I talk a different language sometimes. This meant that our women collectively expressed a strong desire to maintain those cultural practices and highlight the importance of the continuation of these in the transition from traditional to today's maternity care. One of the birth outcomes from Birthing on Noongar Budja was a request, I think I've said this before, but by an elder woman that the stories they had shared with us could be reproduced into the book and be a legacy for their own families, but also for other Aboriginal women in the future. And they felt very strongly about that, and we would also like to include some photos of, you know, some of the elders have asked us, can we put photos in of where we were born, in the tin shed or in the Maya or on the side of the riverbank, just to give more importance to the book, I think, and the legacy. Short video.
Yes.
Okay, you do that. You do.
Okay, we're going to play a short video which tells you something about the work that's been done at the Young Era Research Centre. And then after that, we'll go on to information around the midwives. So let's see if I can get this.
So research tells us that even before we're born, our environment can have a big impact on our lifelong social, physical and emotional health. Once we are born, we all need a safe, nurturing setting in which to thrive. Every new mother and her baby needs a support network to lean on during those first few childhood years. This is especially important for Aboriginal women and their families. The aim of our centre is to produce immediate translatable outcomes that are going to impact on building resilient, healthy families. We know that Aboriginal babies are often born with a low birth rate, and we know that leaves them a poorer start in life. So their education outcomes, their health outcomes are going to be more greatly affected. So everyone has an importance for an Aboriginal child: mother, grandmother, extended family, and the whole community.
It takes a community to help a new mum, I think, just like it takes a community to raise a baby. I believe that closing the gap starts in utero, and a healthy mum and a healthy pregnancy can mean a healthy baby, and that's the best start that we can give them in life, and that's a wonderful thing.
What I particularly love about Now Hero is it's got this life cycle approach. And when you've had this intergenerational trauma and the impacts of that going through each generation, then you can break that by taking this approach. It is about healing, if you like, the whole generation to impact on the next generation. And Aboriginal control, it leads to success. Empowerment, absolutely vital. And what that does is not only get the outcomes you want for the children and the young people and so on, but it actually leads to self-esteem in the whole community. In order for you to make change, if you have the mainstream stakeholders, the mainstream providers, people out of the bureaucracy, you need your champions who are going to champion your work. And I think that's why this partnership has been so important. And if we can get that within the system, we're going to get there.
Sorry. I was thinking about the symposium we had, and you saw the dancers in there, which were the Wally sisters and from Wajak country. And, you know, we were on the Durbal Yarragon where our serpent came through. And they danced, and right at the end of the dance, a dolphin brought her baby dolphin to the shore. And then Millie said to me, "Look, we've all got dolphin tattoos." But I think the sound, that's their totem, and the sound of the didge and the dancing brought the mother and the child of the dolphin to us.
That was pretty special. I mean, their totem coming to embrace, and we all knew pretty much then, you know, we all got a bit emotional about it because it was like, well, okay, our ancestors and the animals and everything that's coming along to this day, it just flowed. It didn't matter what was going on. It just really flowed, and basing that symposium around the elders, because of her, we can fully embracing every one of them all the way through the process of the agenda, talking, expressing themselves, and then at the end of it, for me as the Aboriginal chairperson of the cultural group, for one of the elders, Auntie Viv, to get up and say that she really, really felt a part of it and she loved every moment of it, that to me was, okay, we did something right today. We did it the way we want to do it, not in a structured way that, you know, white people want to do it. So
and also Arnie Madge at the end, who doesn't say much, but what she says is very important. They didn't just come for that one day to present. There were 3 days. They stayed for the whole 3 days. And Arnie Madge stood up for the first time, I believe, in public and thanked everybody because she was so thrilled to be a part of it all. Everybody treated her so well, big smiles. And so she got up and thanked everybody. So, yeah, it was special.
So before we go on, we're just presenting some of the reflections around the midwives. We wanted to share this quote with you. I think the most important thing for midwives to learn is the culture. We're different in different ways. Midwives need to be educated in cultural awareness. We feel, we see, and we do different things to non-Indigenous people. We don't want to be treated special, but we do want you to understand, consider how we do our things, our culture, and how it is to be us.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Gee whiz. Hang on.
Okay.
I'm thinking we're going to pass by a few things because there's certainly something very important that we want to do at the end as well.
So this is, we'll just skip through. We're not saying midwives are not important and their information, but that went really quick.
And anyone that wants the PowerPoint, we can get it to.
So midwives and what they know. The question is not why are Aboriginal women not using the maternity services provided, rather why are we not providing services to Aboriginal women we want to use during pregnancy, childbirth and beyond.
In reflecting on the analysis workshop that we did as research investigators, it seems to me that as Aboriginal investigators, we tended to tread more softly in relation to the midwife's transcript that we have read through in particular. The non-Aboriginal investigators were far more harsh in identifying some of the aspects of the midwife's transcript and were actually outraged by the treatment described in the woman's transcript. We weren't, and it's quite probable that we had become far more accustomed to and therefore had normalised the attitudes of health service staff. As such, we as Aboriginal investigators were not as shocked by the story related in the woman's transcript and were also far less surprised by the details in the midwife's transcript. And on reflection, that's very sad.
So we'll just, from that, as we've run out of time, we're going to just skip through to the recommendations. Sorry, Rhonda. We've heard enough. No.
Unlucky.
So there was 3 recommendations. There were actually more, but we had to condense them down because this was something that we needed to take to the Minister for Health. So we didn't want to waste time going through so many, so we focused on what was really important. So these are the 3 things that we thought was the most pressing, and since having those meetings with them, we've done or had a lot of changes coming through around in those areas. So we just continue to keep going and working with the Health Department and the Minister. Do you want to quickly talk about that, or you?
Yeah, this is Auntie Millie Penny at the bottom. This is the mural that was done, part of the mural, that was done at the Birthing on Noongar Budja Symposium. Everyone, Aboriginal, non-Aboriginal, got a little canvas in their bag, and if they wanted to, they could paint on what they felt Birthing on Noongar Budja was. And we have this incredible mural in our reception at Nunkira, and nobody passes that. In fact, when the Vice-Chancellor stands in front of it, for some reason she gives us money. And then we had a local MP came over, he had to give us money too for the book. And this will become the cover of the birthing stories.
So every time we want to talk to someone around money, we're standing them in front of that mural because it makes them feel like they should give not only some but more.
And I forgot to say, Auntie Millie Penny, she facilitated, collated, she's an art therapist and a counsellor, helped them with their artwork, pulled it together so easily, and she's also a part of us at Nunkira, and she's a female elder from Noongar.
So, sorry to cut you off,
Go,
but you know.
go.
Anyway, so from that, what we just wanted to do before we got off the stage is that I'm hoping it's okay with you all, but last night we had a back in Perth that's made us feel a bit sad, and I'm sorry if I'm going to... But this young lady's life was taken from her 2 weeks ago, and she was a a sister, an auntie, a cousin, a friend, and even a work colleague with us at the North Metro Health Service. And because we couldn't be there last night to support the family and that, we thought it would be really nice to not only have a minute's silence for her, but also the women that we've lost in that 2 weeks. We've lost another 3 women to domestic abuse as well, and any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women. So if you could all join us for a minute's silence, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just remember, speak to the males in your family, encourage them to stop domestic abuse. If they see it with our young boys, our young men, any man, they need to stand up just like we do. We've got to stop this ridiculous, tragic circumstances happening. So I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you.